It is fair to say that the autumnal months are well and truly upon us. The leaves are beginning to change colour and litter the ground. The dark nights are starting to draw near, and the need for extra layers of clothing gives us all an excuse to dust off our band hoodies from yesteryear and wear them. Having said all that, it's fucking sunny today. It's nearly Halloween. Now, before I go any further with this video, I think it's worth pointing out that this topic was inspired completely by the incredible Hardlaw Stories from Tour podcast. Any of you who haven't listened to this podcast, you're in for a treat. It's an incredible podcast. I've said that a few too many times now. The podcast is hosted by Bo Luders, who's in the band Harm's Way. Incredible band, absolutely love that band, along with Colin Young, who's in a myriad of bands, including God's Hate and Twitching Tongues. And they talk very much about hardcore history, but they talk about all things heavy. And it's funny, it's heartwarming, it's sincere. I cannot I cannot recommend the podcast enough. So there you go, check it out. Fucking hell, I speak shit. Now, my original intent for this video was to do 10 albums, predominantly all metal, but I've received so many elitist comments over the last couple of videos that I thought, you know what? I'm not playing that game, so I've decided to include a bunch of other genres and styles as well. My channel is always going to be predominantly about metal, but I love so many different styles of music that I'm not going to not talk about them to satisfy some wankers. However, this video does include death metal, black metal, industrial metal, gothic metal. We've got some electronica in there. We've got more piano-driven, I wouldn't go so far as to say ballads, but piano-driven ballads, as well as some 80s pop. I love 80s pop, and I will fight any... Well, I mean, I say I'll fight anyone. I'll probably just, you know, if they said, no, I'm not that keen on 80s pop, I'd probably just go, that's a bit disappointing, isn't it? But, yeah. So, first off, we have a Death Doom classic, and that is Asphyx with Last One on Earth. I'm sure many of you are familiar with this album, and for those of you who aren't, I'm sure you're familiar with the cover of the album. Perhaps it's this artwork that does it for me, this undead priest lost in limbo, as it were, that brings to mind the darker, colder time of the year. Or it could be the cold, dark atmosphere that's produced by opener MS Bismarck, which brings to mind the cold, murky depths of the ocean floor. But whatever, this Death Doom masterpiece of an album is packed full of glorious, groove-laden riffs that have that unmistakable HM2 guitar tone, that buzzsaw entombed. You'll know it as soon as you hear it. When I hear that crushing breakdown riff in The Crusher, it makes me think of Walking Through Fog. The title track itself is apocalyptic, both lyrically and musically, and it certainly doesn't bring to mind a lovely summer's day. I could quite easily talk about all the tracks on this album, but if you haven't heard this album for whatever reason, I highly recommend that you correct that. This is a fantastic album. I am, as always, going to be doing a Spotify playlist. You can find the link for that in the description, and you can go check it out there. And I guarantee as soon as you hear the first song, the opening riff at MS Bismarck, you're going to be like, oh yeah, this is a good one. Okay, next up, black metal. There's absolutely no way you can do a top 10 album list for the colder weather and not include at least one black metal album. And I've decided to go with Emperor in the Nightside Eclipse. There are many albums I could have chosen. There are many Emperor albums I could have chosen, but this one in particular, it's just, a lot of this list has just been chosen purely on what I felt like listening to recently. So this is one of those albums. The opening 9-minute epic, Into the Infinity of Thoughts, is packed full of frantic riffs and atmospheric keyboards. The burning shadows of silence is immense, and I will never tire of that riff that kicks in at 2 minutes 45. Beyond the Great Vast Forest is an insanely good track. I absolutely adore this one. This has a keyboard line that accompanies the riff that is completely inspired by Morbid Angel's Chapel of Ghouls. Oh my god, I just love this track so damn much. Towards the Pantheon conjures up images of riding into battle through snowy fields, while I Am the Black Wizard sounds as though it was recorded in some cavernous cavern. Perfect cold weather music. Next up, in a bit of change of pace, we have Nick Cave and the Bad Seeds with No More Shall We Part. Now, there are a few Nick Cave albums that I could have quite easily have chosen for this time of the year, but I just always return to this one. I mean, this came out in 2001, which is quite staggering, really. I didn't realise it was as old as that. And I got this pretty much as soon as it came out, and I fell in love with it immediately, and I've been listening to it a lot, especially around this time of year, ever since. As I sat sadly by her side is a beautiful, though deeply melancholic, piano-driven track, as are the title song itself, God Is in the House, and Love Letter. Apologies to my northern friends. My intention is not to mock. And if it is purely myself. The track Hallelujah has always been my personal favourite. It's just a gloriously beautiful song, and it has a fantastic use of strings. It's just a beautiful song. This will be in my playlist for sure. I highly recommend that you check out this song. 15 Feet of Pure White Snow has some real attitude to it. While We Came Along This Road truly showcases Cave's absolute brilliance as a storyteller with his words, though to be fair, that could be said for any one of his songs, especially on this album. It's just absolutely glorious, the images that it conjures up. And again, another fantastic cold weather album. Now, this next band has been soured somewhat over the last couple of years due to the controversy surrounding one of the band members, and actually a video that I've been intending to do for many years has been a video about separating the art from the artists. I've had a few comments about that on my Bands That I Hate video. People saying that you should be able to separate art from the artist. I don't really have a problem with doing that. My problem with a lot of those bands that I mentioned was I often hate the art and the artist, so it's a bit difficult to separate them. But yeah, that's a video I fully intend on doing at some point. I think that would be quite a good one to do, an interesting one. But in terms of this next album that I wanted to talk about, it is Neurosis with Through Silver and Blood. Absolutely phenomenal album. The title track itself is just incredible. Starts out with this really industrial sounding loop, and literally industrial sounding. It sounds like heavy machinery being used, and it just slowly builds up over the course of several minutes. You get the percussion joining in, you get these clean guitar lines, though really creepy, ominous sounding guitar lines, before this riff just explodes. What time did I say it was? Yeah, about 2 minutes 45. That's how long it takes for the riff to really kick in. And once it does, oh my God, it's so damn heavy. Eye is truly unsettling and it's full of discordance and sledgehammer riffs. Purify offers long, drawn-out chords that are very similar to something that Type O Negative would do at their doomiest. The outro to Locust Start is truly glorious, while Strength of Fates offers us a bit of time for reflection, at least until the outro kicks in. Aeon is one of my all-time favourite Neurosis tracks. I think it's like 12 minutes long, something like that. Builds slowly, erupts, dies down again before taking off once more. And the sequence, the section that takes off at around 6 minutes 20 is just, it's very emotional. There's something about that section that just always gets me, especially when the keyboards join in at about 7 minutes. It's just an absolutely insanely good track. This album, unfortunately, is not available on Spotify for some reason. All of their other albums are available, apart from this one, and Times of Grace, which is another incredible album, which is very unfortunate, so I can't include it on the playlist. What the hell was that? I was talking so much then, I got myself out of breath. Cheated by my own ego. My next pick is, I would say, an obvious one. Type O Negative, Bloody Kisses. However, I suspect that most people would probably go for October Rust, but for me, it's always been Bloody Kisses. I have a very special connection to this album. Maybe it was because the time of year that I heard it. No, actually, I heard it in the summer. But I heard it in the late summer. I heard it in like September, going into the winter. So I listened to it a hell of a lot through the winter. But this is just packed full of songs that just lend themselves to the colder weather. Christian Woman just brings to mind, you know, a cold Covenant, is that the right word? Two particular tracks that bring that to mind. The title track itself is absolutely glorious. Just brings to mind this Nordic, it has this real Nordic feel to it. And of course the track Frozen. I mean, you know, it's called Frozen, which is, I'm not going to go too deeply into this album because my Type O Negative album ranking is going to be out for Halloween in a couple of weeks, so I'll be talking about it a lot more then. But yeah, this is the Type O album that I return to. Like I said, a lot of people would probably go for October Rust, but for me it's Bloody Kisses. It's there. My next pick, and now we're going to some 80s pop, and it's Depeche Mode with Violator. Now, I was torn between this and Pornography. You what? the 1982 album by The Cure. Oh, yes, yes, of course, of course. There's truly something unique about 80s pop, I found. There's a real darkness to a lot of the music, and the lyrics were often quite harsh as well. There was, you know, really discussing some pretty nasty topics a lot of times. World in My Eyes is a fantastic start to the album. I really love the synth swells that appear on the chorus. Sweetest Perfection is a particularly sleazy little number. Personal Jesus is, of course, a Stone Cold classic. Halo is packed full of dark, sensual menace. Then we go into the tranquil 6 minutes Waiting for the Night that segues into one of the most glorious, truly epic, probably best pop song of all time, Enjoy the Silence. I nearly fell over then. That was supposed to be dramatic. I suppose it was in a way. Everybody knows that song, and it's just such an amazing song. I remember when it first came out in the charts, and it's one of those songs that I've never tired of. Like, it's just one of those, you know what I mean? You get those songs that you just love them the first time you hear them, and every time after that, it's just an incredible song. Come on, that chorus is just glorious. Blue Dress is just hypnotizing, and Clean is a very, very dark song to close out this album. And it's, again, it's just, this is one of those albums I love to put on the headphones and go out for a walk at night when it's like cold. It just has that feel to it, that vibe, and it's glorious for this time of year. Next up, we have an industrial doom masterpiece of an album, and that is Abyss by Chelsea Wolfe. The industrial elements mixed with the long drawn out doom laden chords, and of course Chelsea's ethereal vocals, just make this an absolutely perfect choice for this time of the year. This ridiculously sunny day in October. Fucking bollocks. As I'm sat down, I'm just going to read my script out. Carrion Flowers is repressed and oppressive at the same time, melding electronica with industrial sounding instrumentation before going into one of my favourite tracks, Iron Moon. Iron Moon is just an incredibly amazing song. It's just that these huge doomy chords and these goth drenched vocals. It's just a gloriously miserable song. Dragged Out is incredibly That was a crow then. That was quite apt. Dragged Out is incredibly claustrophobic, while More is absolutely terrifying, with Chelsea singing, In the More, shattered teeth, underneath a dripping tongue. I've been waiting in silence while you're sleeping for you to believe. Fucking hell. After the Fall has a pulsing industrial chorus, while Crazy Love is a more stripped down acoustic affair. And the title track itself is a really haunting song that truly lives up to its name. Into the Abyss indeed. Yes, a perfect weather. A perfect choice for cold weather. There's choices, there's words. We all choose how to use those words in what order we want. I'm not going to fucking bow down to your limitations of what my word should be. The next album on my list is Mezzanine by Massive Attack, and there's absolutely no way I couldn't include this on my list, because this is, without question, one of the first albums that I really start listening to again at this time of the year. There's something nice about donning a really good pair of headphones and going out when it's a little bit darker and colder and just walking around listening to this album. It's just incredible. The production and the atmosphere on this are top tier. And yeah, some people might be dismissive of this on a channel like mine, but I love this album. As simple as that. So much so I nearly belched. That's how passionately I feel about this. All right? I don't know what it is about the colder weather, but for some reason I've become much more receptive to bass lines. Now, I've always loved a good bass line, but yeah, it really just gets me in that meditative, hypnotic kind of state around this time of year. I love it. Speaking of hypnotic bass lines, opening track Angel starts out with a very pulsing bass line that's groovy yet very unsettling at the same time. And this is a song that builds slowly and gets more aggressive as it goes. A truly glorious song. If you've never really checked out any Massive Attack, or you've only ever been aware of the real hits, although this was a hit, definitely check this track out. Incredible. Rising Sun is another one that's very dark and troubling. It brings to mind the dark and seedy nightlife and darkened clubs. Teardrop is a song that is impossible probably not to have heard, but despite its insane popularity, there's no denying it's still a hauntingly beautiful piece of music. It really is wonderful. Inertia Creep is another one that's perfect for walking around in the colder weather, despite its exotic sound and eastern chords. It's fucking boiling. The Exchange has a real chilled out dub vibe, and that's possibly the whitest thing I've ever said. Dissolved Girl is another track that makes me think of walking through insanely crowded city streets in the colder time of the year. And Man Next Door is a song that makes me want to kick the shit out of my noisy neighbour. I'm not sure that that's, you know, relevant to this time of the year, but I'm going with it. I could go on about every single track, but they all in some way have some feeling of menace and kind of give you that feeling of the struggles of everyday life and just how cold that is. All right. Next on my list is Triptychon with Melina Chasmata. Now, I could have easily gone for Celtic Frost's Monotheist, but this is the album that I chose. So the album starts out with a song called Tree of Suffocating Souls, for God's sake. You know how much colder you can get? It's hardly a summer party album, is it? Boleskine House features some gloomy bass and truly sludgy guitar riffs in there. Boleskine House, I believe it's situated on the shores of Loch Ness. I think it has something to do with Aleister Crowley. He used to stay there, as did Jimmy Page. So they're a cult shit, you know what I mean? That's pretty cold, isn't it? Loch Ness is probably fucking cold as well. It's a cold album, isn't it? Altar of Deceit is my personal favourite track, with Tom G. Warrior bellowing, "I shall never see your altar of deceit." What, because it's a chorus? Because it's this chorus, that's right, yes, because it's the chorus. Black Snow sounds like the audio equivalent of being lost in the tundra, while In the Sleep of Death makes me feel as though my soul is falling into the abyss. You know what? I don't want to listen to this album anymore. Jesus. And that brings me to my last pick for today's video. And the album is Shrine Builder by the band Shrine Builder. Now, this is a short-lived side project that came out in 2009, I think it was. And it consists of Neurosis's Scott Kelly, along with Scott Wino Weinrich of The Obsessed and St. Vitus. We also have Al Ciceros, most commonly known from Sleep and his own band Ohm, as well as Del Crover from the Melvins on drums. This whole album feels as though you're just having a spell cast over you. And again, it's just a perfect one for this colder time of the year, this beautiful, sunny, cold time of the year. October 19th, for fuck's sake. It's 5 songs in total, but I think it's about 42 minutes in length. And what I really like about this album is it clearly showcases each of the bands represented, though each song does kind of feel like it's been written by one particular member and, you know, kind of has a more predominant their band feel. Oh God, again, words, you know what I mean? They're tough, aren't they? Opening track Solar Benediction is a good mix of all of the band, but starts out with a very Wino-esque kind of a, you know, sleazier stoner rock vibe that goes into a more Neurosis inspired section before closing with a more sleep stoner vibe. There's a lot of stoner vibes. Pyramid of the Moon feels very much more in line with something Al would do with Ohm, especially the outro sequence is very meditative, plodding, just repetitive, hypnotic riff and words again. They were words. What is it with words? There's always words. Having said that, the next track, Blind for All to See, is very much an Ohm-inspired song. The Architect has Wino's signature riffs all over it, very reminiscent of something that could have been done with St. Vitus or The Obsessed. And the closing track, Science of Anger, is another one with a very strong Wino influence to it. And I don't know if it's just because I heard this for the first time in the winter. I remember listening to this one after being particularly drunk, walking home from my parents' house on Christmas Day. Very cold day it was. And I was just immersed in this album. So maybe it's just that, you know, quite often with these albums, the first time that you hear them has a lot to do with it. So if you heard them in the winter, maybe it just takes you back to those times. But I absolutely love this album. It's a real shame as well, because they toured briefly in 2010, and I had tickets to go see them. I actually went to Paris for a couple of days on my own because I'm a bit of a hipster twat in many ways, and I was doing my whole Henry Miller kind of, thing there. And while I was over there, Pete Steele died, which was a real downer. I remember listening to Drunk in Paris while I was drunk in Paris, and I got back to London expressly to see the Shrine Builder gig, and when I arrived at the venue, the gig had been cancelled because the band couldn't get over because of the eruption of a volcano. I remember having a bit of issues getting back from Paris. What the fuck does this have to do with anything? As I'm looking at a dying battery on my GoPro, that indicates that I have gone on for way too damn long. But that's 10 albums that I bring to you that I listen to during the colder months. Make sure you leave a comment for the ones that you listen to, and check out my playlist if you feel so inclined. I hope that you enjoyed the video. This has been quite a fun one for me to put together. There were certain albums that I thought were going to be on this list, and they weren't, because we are getting into the colder months despite today, and all the albums that I've chosen are the albums that I've just naturally gone to. So, I just kind of looked at my listening history and just found that these albums were all on there in the last couple of weeks. So that says something itself. Takes the intellectualization out of it, doesn't it? Which is good for me, because you know what I'm like with words. Having said that, I've talked enough. I'll catch you on the next one. See you later all.